Probably the same with psychedelic drugs. I mean, I've talked to Dr. Rick Stressman a few months ago, and the drug he's been researching, DMT, he's been researching it for a few years in the mid 90s. And the funny thing is, people went through very similar experience regardless of their belief and their status and where they're coming from. And when we talked, he's at the point where he believes that this might be actually, let's say, a pathway or a doorway to whatever else there is outside of there.
So, sure, yeah. And I mean, I think he obviously will know much more about the science behind it than I do. But from face value, when I look at something like that, I would probably suggest that it's actually the opposite. The fact that everybody, regardless of their belief or their background, is experiencing the same thing, that should say perhaps that is the actual way that chemical reacts with the human body, So it doesn't matter if you're Muslim or Christian. If you're all experiencing the same thing, it just shows that you're all human and that this chemical has a certain reaction with human bodies that causes this sort of experience. So, I mean, obviously, he obviously will know more about the science and sort of what's possible and not possible, and he's sort of free to have his own beliefs. But yeah, I mean, I feel like there's always more of a more natural explanation to these sort of things than jumping to the supernatural.
So did you ever have any experiences on psychedelic drugs that would be similar?
No. I mean, I've tried to keep clear of psychedelic drugs. In terms of what has changed in my life, I definitely have a much more different relationship with alcohol and drugs. I don't want to either just flat out poison my body either more than it is poisoned, and I'm on quite a few medications as it is. And then the other part is that I don't want to alter my perception of life to a point where it's sort of life for me is the way I experience at the moment is everything. And so experiences are everything, and just living is everything to me. And so I don't want to sort of ruin that by sort of perceiving it in any other sort of way, I guess. So I sort of definitely has changed my sort of attitude towards these sort of different chemicals and drugs and alcohol as well.
How has this impacted your social life? How do your friends react, or are your friends afraid? Because I have to be honest, we've been in touch for a while now, and it's probably completely strange, but when you didn't reply right away, I was always thinking, oh Jesus, did something happen to him? Like, did he die now between the last email, and why isn't he not replying for the past few days? Like, I mean, it's probably a stupid thought to think, but that's kind of stuff that just goes through your head, or at least went through my head. So do you have friends who say, oh, maybe we shouldn't do this or that with him because what if he dies while we're, I don't know, playing poker or are at a restaurant? So
yeah. No, I mean, I think I've tried to make my heart like sort of. I think my friends know now that it's something I live with, but it's not something that I sort of let stop me. And even sort of on the alcohol and sort of going out point, I'm still the first one to go out to the pub and go sort of out to a club afterwards. I definitely don't let it stop me. I just don't participate in some of the more sort of the drug taking and that sort of thing. So it's definitely like I'm still out there and doing it. My friends know sort of I will tell them when I've hit my limit, and worst case scenario is I'll tell them when I feel that 8-second feeling. And so they've been really, really understanding, just, and they've been great in just sort of helping me, especially when I walk these days and go upstairs, I need to take 20 seconds to calm down and just sort of, I still get a little bit of anxiety when I walk, and when I sort of go up, especially when I go upstairs, stairs have killed me 8 times now. So every time I go up a set of stairs, I'm just like, not this time. Like, it's sort of, so I do have a sort of little bit of anxiety when it's sort of, and they've been really supportive and just sort of understanding that I need to take a break every now and again. But it does definitely, when you're meeting somebody new and sort of, and dating and things like that, you do sort of have to either just suck it up a little bit, or sort of, it's quite funny, as you were saying, like you didn't know if I'd passed away, or you didn't know if I was, if I'd had a cardiac arrest or not. I was actually sort of talking to a girl online and on these sort of dating apps, and we'd arranged to have a date, and I'd sort of that was just before I went into cardiac arrest last time at the treadmill. And so this was because I think that actually, to be fair, I don't want to say it, but I think it may have been a Thursday. And then now that I think about it, because I was in hospital they kept me in observation Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I was supposed to go out that weekend. And I remember just sort of messaging her on the Sunday and just being like, oh, sorry, I didn't get in touch. I died on Friday. Like I died last week. I couldn't. We couldn't go out. And she's like, "What do you mean you died?" Like, so, and then had to go through the whole story. And it is definitely a talking point when you do meet new people, and everybody wants to ask 100 questions. And but no, it's more, especially now when you just got to. I joke about it. So when people whenever somebody makes a pun like, oh, I literally died when I found out about such and such, and I'm like.
Yeah.
Try it someday. I'll tell you about literally dying about stuff. It's just you just got to make fun of it. And I think people, people put even to a negative effect, and that probably people now socially think of it more as a joke than an actual serious. It's just a joke that I tell people now, not an actual thing that I go through. But
Okay.
I think that's the better way to handle it.
Well, where do you take your sense of humor from?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think it's just I like to think it's very Australian. I mean, I don't know how true that is. I think it's a little bit sort of patriotism in myself. But, I feel like always have grown up in I've never had any worries, and the Australian phrase, no worries. It's like you don't really have to. Yeah, and even people that sort of ask me now, it's like, well, aren't you worried about being in England and sort of all this? And I'm like, well, the benefit of being Australian is that worst case scenario is I have to go back to Australia. It's like I have to go back to Australia. Oh my God, I've got to go to a place called the Sunshine Coast and live out the rest of my life like back there. And so really I don't have to worry about that. And Australia's got a good healthcare system, which again, so I don't have to worry about that. And I haven't had to worry about that here in England. So I think, it's definitely afforded me the ability to keep it in the, sort of, just compartmentalize it into the back of my mind and sort of not worry about it. And that sort of then lends itself into just making jokes at its expense. And I think, I'm not sure. I mean, I think I've grown up on comedy I couldn't even say where I get my sense of humor from, but it's definitely just sort of the way I deal with it. And
Okay. And does it impact the way you plan your future? Like you mentioned at the moment you're single, so if you would find a partner and you would think about kids, for example, would you say, oh, maybe that's not something because you never know and have this condition? Or
yeah, definitely. I mean, I do want kids, and then I obviously sort of then think about the sort of the genetic screening treatments and the sort of I follow. There's a new process called CRISPR, which has the possibility of sort of selectively getting rid of the sort of this gene that's in our family, or and sort of or the different options are around sort of that, and then obviously age comes into it as well, and I do sort of worry that time is ticking and things like that, and when it's quite somber, but it's quite when I go to the transplant hospital. They've got a plaque on the wall, and the plaque is, we've got the world record for the longest surviving heart transplant patient. And I'm like, oh, well, that's reassuring. And then you look and it's like 28 years and you're like, well, I kind of want to live longer than another 28 years kind of thing. And so you just sort of think like, well, like if I have it now, do it, like, will I be healthy enough in 15 years when they're a teenager and things, so yeah, it's definitely something that I do think about. I do want to think about it and sort of planning for it. But then there's also, I'm not there yet with my career. I've had a great time here in London. I've been in London now for 6 years. I do want to make America my next stop. So sort of my next chapter, I want it to be in the United States. How does health insurance play out on that? How does the political situation, luckily with Obamacare recently, sort of in the last couple of years, I can actually get insurance, because if I went there previously, most of the insurance companies probably just wouldn't even insure me, or they, they just have ridiculously high premiums. So now with sort of the latest changes, I can at least get insured and be treated the same way. So we'll see how that plays out under the new government and future governments, but I definitely have to keep my eye on those sort of things. The biggest thing that does stop me from moving to America is health. So it's the one thing. It's it's not the money, it's not job, it's not anything else. It's like, what's the health insurance like? What will I do for health insurance? So it's definitely something I have to keep track of in my future plans. And then there is this, there is the expectation, I guess, from cardiologists. I take it very lightly, but I think cardiologists expect that, it is going to get worse soon or quickly. And so, it's this unknown that I have to plan for. What if I do need a transplant next year? What if I need it in 2 years? How does that process happen? A lot of it is also, because I've lived outside of Australia for so long now that I'm not sort of on their medical system anymore, like sort of as a patient. So if I was to need a heart transplant and I decided to go back to Australia to go with it with my family, I'd have to go back onto the Australian system. I'd have to go through all the processes of seeing the cardiologists, of doing the tests, of sort of getting all those sort of steps. And that's not going to be a quick process. That's, that may take 6 months on its own. So not only do I need to know 6 months in advance if I need a transplant, I sort of, need to make sure that I'm healthy enough to travel back to Australia within those 6 months to get a transplant and start that process. So yeah, it's definitely, it definitely complicates my future plans. But in saying that, I feel like I have this sort of bug of adventure and sort of risk, and I do just want to I think my next move is just to sort of pack up England and move to New York, and that's where I'll sort of
move to
make
hell.
my next chapter, and I'll see how it plans out. Again, worst case scenario, I have to go back to Australia, so that's that's the worst case scenario.
Okay. Yeah. And in terms of the psychological component of it, you mentioned that you had these like almost PTSD-like symptoms where you were, Thursdays are obviously a thing that's not too high on your priority list, I guess, than stairs. So what does it do to you in your day-to-day life?
Yeah, so I do, it's really hard, I guess, for me just to even tell the differences, and sort of, I do try work on it. But I went and saw a counselor once to sort of get help with these sort of feelings. And, so at the moment I sort of walk, and then I'll maybe get 5 minutes or 10 minutes and I'll get stuck in it. Like, it's quite funny. Like, I can now tell when I'm starting to get anxious about it. So it's just, it's a quick phrase. Like, even to the point where like one of my friends will be like, "Oh, you haven't stopped recently." And then like that is just like, okay. Oh shit, I haven't I haven't stopped. Should I stop? What, like, should we keep going? And then that like causes me to sort of get anxious. Okay. And then that feeling of being anxious is similar to the feeling of going into cardiac arrest. So, it's this sort of really quick vicious cycle that speeds up. And then I just like, no, I have to stop. Like, I'm just going to stop and stand here for 5 minutes and just get my breath. And so again, being with sort of friends that understand that and are really supportive of that has helped. But yeah, I like to joke that, I'll stop in the middle of the road if I have to. And I have stopped in the middle of the road. I was crossing Trafalgar Square here in London, and I sort of felt that feeling, and I was like, well, it's quite a wide road, so I could either try and push through it or just stop in the middle of the road. And so I stopped in the middle of the road and just waited for 20 seconds, and people were beeping their horns. And I'm just like, well, I haven't been hit by a car yet, but I've died 9 times from walking. So I'm just I'll take my chance. I'll take my chances with the cars. I think I've probably got a better rate of survival. But so yeah, it's definitely this sort of there is this sort of element that I do need to get over. But I went and saw a counselor, and he's like, okay, well, when you feel those feelings, keep walking. Like, just push through them. You'll slowly train your body to realize that they're nothing. They're just your brain playing tricks on you. And so I was like, okay, great. So we went out the back of the hospital and went for a walk, and the counselor's like, how you feeling? I'm like, oh yeah, I'm feeling fine. And then no, I felt it. I felt like this sort of feeling. I was like, I felt the feeling like I really want to stop now. And he's like, nope, let's just keep walking, keep pushing through it. And so I got about 2 seconds more, and I was like, nope, it's done. And then so I sat down and I went into cardiac arrest. And so I was like,
that's the one death we missed, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just like, well, that's, like, you're here, your job to get me over these things, and you practically just proved that the feelings I feel could, not all cases obviously, but they could lead to a cardiac arrest. And so it definitely makes me sort of, you have to evaluate each time, like, is it worth, like, is it really worth walking? Like, if I feel like I need to stop, is it worth me keep going, considering it could lead to my death? So it's like, it's kind of that idea, like, if I take, so you do sort of then get stuck in these loops of, if I take another step, I'm, like, you do start like watching your steps, like, I can't even take another step. And I've frozen up a few times on stairwells because I'm like, if I take one more step up this stairs, I'm going to die. Like, so you do get into these sort of dark cycles in your head. But yeah, it's definitely, I think it's getting a bit more manageable, and that comes over time. And it does take about 18 months or so, like I said previously, to actually almost start to forget that you've got the condition. And so you just sort of get back to normal. But there is this sort of big period where you're constantly paranoid, and you're sort of really sort of, and nightmares and all that sort of stuff that comes with the PTSD type symptoms. So.
We started the interview or the conversation with the mention that this is actually quite a common condition to have. Is there anything can people test for this?
Yeah, so I think nowadays they're quite advanced on their testing, and they can do gene testing as well to see if you've got specific genes. I think the UK has been really good on sort of getting just general cardiac testing out to young people, because sort of like in my case, the sort of the biggest killer, I guess, of this condition is that people just assume that you're young, fit, and healthy, you don't have a problem. And so, they think, oh, you played soccer, you played cricket your entire life, like you're fit and healthy, you don't have a heart condition. Only really big 65-year-olds, who have eaten junk food all their lives have heart conditions. And so that's the most dangerous aspect of it. And, I think getting people to realize that, no, even like, unfortunately, there was a case of a girl who the same weekend as Carrie Fisher, Princess Leia, passed away from a cardiac arrest. Mm-hmm. That same week, there was an 8-year-old girl in Ireland who passed away from it on a flight back home to Ireland. And, it's that sort of realization that, like, just she was a perfectly normal, healthy, seemingly healthy 8-year-old girl, but she had this sort of hidden heart condition that didn't go checked, and it just randomly chose that moment to go into cardiac arrest. So I think, making sure that just because you think that you're young, fit, and healthy, go get yourself checked out, and don't sort of, and I think there was a more famous example of a football player. I think he played for Tottenham, and he actually had a cardiac arrest on the pitch. Like, this is a professional athlete who, has been probably sort of working out 10 hours a day for all his life, and yet he just sort of dropped dead on the football pitch from a cardiac arrest because of a condition that he didn't even know he had. So yeah, it's definitely go get yourself tested. Your general practitioner, your local doctor should be able to sort of point you in the right direction.
Okay. I want to close this conversation, and there's 2 questions I always ask at the end. And the first question is, this is about extraordinary people in different fields and from different places around the globe, and you certainly are quite extraordinary.
Just the guy that's happened to die 9 times.
Just by the fact that you died 9 times, but also I think by how positive you are, and by how you manage to remain your good spirits and your humor and everything. And who do you consider to be someone extraordinary?
I mean, for me, I guess sticking with the science theme, and also I guess a science and advertising the same way. I have massive respect for those that help bring science to life and sort of make the scientific method and the scientific way exciting. And so for that reason, for me, people like Bill Nye and oh my God, Stephen Fry, and my mind's just blanked and I feel really, really bad. The astrophysicist, who's also really outspoken about this. Oh my god, I can't believe I blanked on his name. Sorry,
that college dude. Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Neil deGrasse Tyson. Oh my god! I'm sorry, Neil deGrasse Tyson. If you do ever see this, you're one of my idols. I just let you know. So it's this idea of, not just like sort of being great scientists themselves and sort of contributing in that way, but more so the fact of, making it exciting for young people to think about science and sort of, and making it cool and sexy and sort of making it, accessible to everybody. So definitely mad props for those guys.
Okay. And last question, what's your message to everyone who's listening or who's watching?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, it's sort of this thing that it's definitely sort of struck home because of this is just, a lot of people, especially sort of the religious, they ask, well, how can you find meaning if you don't believe in a religion? And for me, especially with this all happening, I am so awe-inspired that I exist at all. It is unbelievably amazing that I'm still alive. And so that, and it's unbelievably amazing that I was even alive in the first place. It took 3 billion years for Earth to get to a point where it could take life. Life evolved over another billion years. Scientists will probably correct me on that. But, it's just the fact that then randomly, pregnancy and birth that happened and I became the person I am, that's just so amazing. And so I implore people, there's always, they say, oh, I don't have a reason for living, and, you may get depressed and you feel like you don't have a reason to exist, but just existing in its own sense is just amazing. So I'd really want to get out there that, just take solace in the fact that you're alive at all. That is an amazing achievement in and of itself. So, go and enjoy life however you want to. You don't have to be a professional football athlete, just enjoy life how you want to enjoy it. You don't have to, there's no standard you have to live to. You're alive. So be great, celebrate the fact that you're alive. So birthdays are a massive deal for me. It's literally a celebration of being alive each year. So I definitely, so that's probably my sort of biggest message is just appreciate being alive.
Jamie Poole, thank you so much for your time, and it was a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Talk soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Here comes the sunshine and burns away clouds like they never were.